All right, welcome back, Pack, to another episode of Speak Now. I am joined again with Eli and Steve. Back-to-back weeks, we are here. We are all sitting pretty good right now with both of our football teams, the Lions and the Steelers, being atop their division going into Week 5. We will get into our Week 5 picks always at the end of the episode. But we also got to celebrate baseball. We got the postseason here again. Detroit Tigers winning on the road in Cleveland. They will take a 1-0 lead. And we got the Cubs winning against the Padres at home, taking a 1-0 lead in the wild card. Two more games tonight. This, guys, is my favorite time of the year for sports. MLB postseason and the NFL season, like, meeting together, to me is just what sports, like, the pinnacle of sports for myself. Eli, how are you feeling after the Tigers dub?
Great. It sucks because I don't think Tigers fans are used to success again because there's always pessimists that are saying, well, the bats didn't wake up. We're playing the Guardians, so don't really expect a 5-run game. I think that's pretty unrealistic. I mean, even the second game, the Cubs game, only had 4 runs. It's postseason baseball, it tightens up, but it's the Tigers playing their brand of baseball that they need to. It's winning baseball. I mean, we were like 15 games under 500 in September. So I don't care if our 2 runs are from a bloop single and a bunt, sacrifice bunt. A win's a win. We played Guardians baseball today and took the dub. So can't really be mad.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is the Tigers had 5 sacrifice bunts the whole season and put 2 bunts down today. Yeah, playoff baseball. You got Gavin Williams. He pitched, I believe, 4 games against the Tigers, 37 strikeouts in like 22 innings. Skubal pitched against the Guardians, of course, his normal self during the regular season, 28 innings, 40 strikeouts. I mean, it's just a great matchup, great playoff baseball. Like you said, there's nothing like postseason baseball. Just with the updated rules and updating the game pace, I know viewership even for regular seasons up 20 some percent. So it's just that much more exciting. People are getting back into baseball kind of like they never have before. And yes, there is some pessimism with the Tigers, but that's all cured if we take this series with the Guardians. Everybody forgets about that 3-13 finish, and basically we're onto that next round. Who would it be if the Tigers win the series? Is that determined?
Mariners.
Yeah,
Mariners.
so Mariners. So that would be David versus Goliath, but obviously we got to get there before we worry about that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm really concerned for the Tigers without Skubal starting to see if we can get another win there. But anything is possible with postseason baseball. We will get into that later in the episode. And honestly, like, I have stuff written down of like where the teams ranked during the regular season, their team records versus other teams during the regular season. But all that goes out the window in postseason baseball. We've seen teams go on Cinderella like runs. Just recently, the Diamondbacks a couple of years ago make the World Series out of seemingly nowhere. The Cardinals back in 2011 came out of nowhere in the month of September to go win it all. So really anything can happen. But we got to talk about 2 players that are going to be playing postseason baseball. One later today, one in the second round. They are the AL MVP favorites. There is a huge discussion here. Some people think there isn't much. It should be Aaron Judge by a landslide. Other people will argue for Big Dumper Cal Raleigh. And so we're going to partake in that debate. We're going to share our opinions. Eli didn't think that this was going to be a long topic, but I'm a little curious to see where he's going there.
Yeah, I mean, it is kudos to Cal Raleigh for his season. I mean, it's historically one of the best, if not the best catcher seasons you can debate. You'd have to go back a while to find one this good. I mean, 60 home runs is historic, and he's a switch hitter, and he's a catcher. So, you can pile all that on. But I just don't see, it's kind of like how as long as Shohei is, like in the NL, as long as Shohei is going at the level that he is, he's going to win it. And for me, it's when I look at Judge, yeah, his home runs are less, his home runs and RBIs are both the 2 where he trails to Big Dumper. But everything else, I mean, Aaron Judge, just a revolutionary hitter, led the AL in batting average, on base was extremely high. And even he had a little stint there where his fielding wasn't great because of the elbow issue that he sustained, and kind of had a long stretch where he had to go on and off the field. But he's +2 in defensive run save, so he's an above average fielder, which is where they'll talk about Cal Raleigh, be like he is playing arguably the hardest position to play in baseball. But to me, he's Cal Riley's a great framer. I think he's in the 80th percentile in framing pitches. But in terms of defensive run saves, I believe he's at straight zero. So for me, it's like that's the one argument where you look at his position necessarily. But to me, I don't think I can give an MVP to Cal Raleigh simply because of his position when Aaron Judge statistically and everything other than RBIs and home runs, is still at a historic level.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the other side of that. I mean, anytime there's anybody in an MVP race and it's even close, it's typically gonna go to the guy that's not typically in the race. So that would be Rally. Another argument I would have there is I don't believe without it's most valuable player, it's not most valuable stats. So when you get to that deadline or the trade deadline, having a guy like Cal Raleigh, I mean the Mariners went all in, right? We'll get into some of those details later. I mean, they made several moves at the trade deadline that without a guy like Raleigh, they wouldn't even have thought about making. Whereas the Yankees already kind of have, yes, they made moves, but they already make those moves in the off season with their payroll and those sorts of things. And yes, Judge, every year he's the best player in the American League, right? I mean, there's no doubt about that. But this is an MVP award, not just best player in the American League. So, well, if you took some of those numbers, like you referenced home runs and RBIs, Raleigh does have the edge there. Obviously, there's an 80-some point advantage for Judge with average, but I just think, the Mariners just decided to go all in because they had a guy like Raleigh, a guy that just has a huge strike zone that could basically take the ball out of the park at any time, just like Aaron Judge. So they're very similar in that respect. And then you did reference playing catcher, which I think is also huge in the argument. So, well, any other year, I would say absolutely Judge. This year, I would take Cal Raleigh.
Yeah, I'm with Steve on this one. I am a big dumper believer in the MVP award. I will concede that Aaron Judge is the better player, but to Steve's credit, like this is most valuable player, not just best player. And I get that oftentimes the best player is the most valuable player. I don't agree here. Especially, I think, yeah, it is really important that Cal Raleigh plays catcher. As someone that is a longtime St. Louis Cardinals fan, I know how valuable Yadier Molina was to those Cardinal teams in ways that just couldn't be measured in statistics, and just in terms of like handling a pitching staff. And I can just only imagine that Cal. I mean, he started 119 games at catcher this year. So if he's a liability at catcher, he's not playing catcher that often, as often as he was. They're DHing him a little bit more, but really what this reminds me of in terms of seasons MVP races and more recent history is actually Mike Trout versus Miggy back in 2012. So Miggy's Triple Crown year, it's an example of Miggy has the Triple Crown that's super historic, something that hasn't been done since Carl Yastrzemski way back in the day. But you have Mike Trout, who's just a better player. He's the much better player. And honestly, when you look at the WAR comparison, I know WAR isn't the end-all be-all of everything, but it's just eerily similar. Mike Trout that season had a 10.5 WAR, according to Baseball Reference. Aaron Judge, a 9.7. Miggy had a 7.1, and Cal Raleigh has a 7.3, according to Baseball Reference. So it's very similar. And Cal Raleigh hitting 60 home runs without just being a catcher is historic in and of itself. He's one of 7 players to have hit 60 home runs in a season. 3 of those guys being people that are linked to PEDs, the other 3 being Yankees legends, Judge included in that. So it's one of those things where this is a historic season. Yeah, it's not the Triple Crown, but it's still 60 home runs. And we add the fact that he plays catcher. This dude is taking a beating every single day that he goes out there to catch, like the strain that it puts on his body, especially like the lower part of your body that honestly where a lot of the power is generated. It's not like just upper body strength. It is a lot of core, lower body, being able to get that torque around with the barrel. So yeah, to me, this is just it's a historic season. Um, yeah, and to Steve's credit, I do think voters factor in the fact that Judge has been in the MVP conversation now for the last 5 or so years and has won multiple MVP awards. Like Cal Raleigh coming out of not nowhere, was still a very good player before the season, but really breaking out in this way just feels like an MVP season. Eli, I'll give you a chance to respond before I get into even more statistics of why I think Cal Raleigh should be the MVP.
Well, I mean, in the terms of discussing, like, Cal Raleigh is everything to the Mariners in discrediting. I think without Judge, the Yankees are arguably not a playoff team. They're on the edge. I mean, they struggled for a portion where Judge had his little dry spell, where he had his little elbow injury, like that area where the Yankees had um, a little dip in production, just as the Mariners had an area where Cal Raleigh slumped. Both of them had slumps, but I don't really necessarily think Cal Raleigh's as I think they're equal, if not Judge is more valuable to the Yankees as Raleigh is to the Mariners. I mean, the Mariners have arguably the best closer in baseball in Andres Munoz. They have arguably the best pitching staff in general with Logan Gilbert and Brian Wu, really coming to himself, and then Luis Castillo, like those top three guys. And then you add in their offseason addition, or not offseason, but trade deadline additions. I don't necessarily think that makes Cal Raleigh way more important than Aaron Judge. Obviously, the catching thing is a revelation. The fact that, I mean, a catcher hitting 60 home runs is unheard of, but I just think that the consistency that Judge matches up with, he had 50 less at bats. If he didn't have that injury, I think he would have hit 60 home runs as well again. Obviously, that's a big what if. We can do what ifs all day, so I know that that'd be taken with a grain of salt. But I don't know. I have a hard time looking at Judge's stats and saying, how do you not give it to this guy? Because he is the most valuable. Because without the Yankees, I think it'd be hard calling them the Bronx Bombers because you look at the rest of their team. And other than Cody Bellinger, I don't think there's a lot of bats feared in that lineup right now. I think the Yankees live and breathe between Aaron Judge, and they have for pretty much 5-6 years now.
Okay, so, but do the Mariners make the playoffs without Cal Raleigh? I don't think that that's true either.
No, which I think that they're both equally as I don't think one necessarily has an exponentially amount more value than the other. Where I'm not sure if either team, I think without Cal Raleigh, I think the Mariners have a better shot of making the playoffs than the Yankees do, to be completely honest. With their current team right now, I 100% think that the Mariners would have a better chance of making the playoffs than the Yankees right now, based off of the pitching staffs, and I think the players outside of them in the 9-person lineup. I would take the Mariners 100%.
Okay, but here's the thing: here's for me where this really just becomes like the dagger for me with Cal Raleigh being the MVP. Is they won their division. Like the Mariners won their division versus the Yankees who are a wild card team. Like that counts for something. Like that they don't win their division without Cal Raleigh, and I don't believe that. I like sure they might still be a playoff team, but they don't win that division. And this is the first time that they've won their division since 2001. Like that counts for something in terms of the story of Cal Raleigh's MVP season. Like in all honesty, like maybe it shouldn't matter, but I do feel like these legacies, these stories, these things matter in terms of voting for something like an MVP, and in terms of just what it has meant to the Mariners organization this season that Cal Raleigh has is MVP worthy. This is only the fourth time in their history that they've won their division. The first time, like I said, since 2001. This is only the sixth time in their history that they've made the playoffs even. So like the Mariners have been around since 1977. This is only the sixth time that they've ever made the playoffs. Versus how many times do you think the Yankees have made the playoffs just in that span alone? So in terms of like overall legacy and what it means to like this franchise, I that to me is just MVP worthy. Like Cal Raleigh has not only through his season had a historic season, but a season in which really through his bat they have not only made the playoffs, but they've also won their division, which is something that they almost never do in their history. And he's given them a chance to like now actually win a playoff series, go on a World Series run, and I think that that counts for something in terms of the overall narrative of this season. When the season is told, I think we're going to be looking back on more Cal Raleigh as a catcher hitting 60 home runs and leading the Mariners to an AL West title than we are Aaron Judge's regular season.
I'm not going to fault Aaron Judge for the Mariners being a trash organization for most of their lifetime.
Well, no, but I think that stuff matters. Like that stuff in terms of like considering all this does count for something. I do think that in some ways like that can work against someone like an Aaron Judge. It's the same reason why like you have a bunch of Yankees or go to the NFL, you have a bunch of Steelers players that like maybe should be in the Hall of Fame that aren't just because of the fatigue that's there. I like whether or not that should exist, it does exist. Like there is like Yankees fatigue that exists, and there is Judge fatigue that exists.
Yeah, I think the Mariners kind of garnered national attention, and obviously the big dumper and people talking about him. Obviously, Judge was already a name there. It's kind of like 7 or 8 games into last year. Jared Goff was the MVP. People are just thirsting for that guy, the new face, the next guy. If he didn't have that game against the Houston Texans, continue doing what he's doing. I mean, Jared Goff was your MVP last year. Kind of the same thing with Cal Raleigh. Oh, absolutely. Jared Goff was MVP all day last year through first half of the season. He was number one in every single metric. But I mean, would you say he's better than Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen? Of course not. Same thing here. Cal Raleigh is not better than Aaron Judge as far as an overall baseball player, lifetime achievements thus far, those kind of things. But yeah, the national attention, the nickname, the value to the organization, all those things. At least for this season, I would say he's the MVP.
I mean, I won't agree. In the end, I take it as who do I think is the MVP, not who do I think the media is going to give a pity. Like, oh, he hasn't won yet. Like in the end, it's who deserves it the most, and it's the guy who leads it in almost every other category. And the Yankees still had 4 more wins than the Mariners, so it's not like it was like, oh, they barely scratched into the playoffs. They're a 94 win team still, so it's like in the end, Cal Raleigh's season's historic, but Aaron Judge is arguably the best player of our generation, him and Shohei, and I don't think he should be faulted for his team having historically great franchise history.
Okay, I have a question for you then. Should Mike Trout have won the MVP in 2012 and 2013 when he was statistically better than Miguel Cabrera?
I would have to look into that season more, but I do think that there could be an argument into it. I'd have to look into that more. That's not something I've looked into close enough. But I mean, that's the thing with like Mike Trout is that that is the year that he led them to the playoffs as well, correct? Or was that outside of that?
I'd have to look at. Yeah, I'd have to look at that.
Okay. Because I know that he's only made it once, but no, I wouldn't be. Obviously, I love Miggy. I mean, he's the really one. Him and JV are the greats of my time being able to watch him. But that's not to say I can't admit when somebody deserves. Like I don't personally. I never had Jared Goff number 1 in the MVP ever. That was Josh Allen and Lamar were. I mean, he was in the conversation, but like. I don't think I could ever. He took himself out of the conversation, but he was never on top of the conversation. That could be a whole nother debate. But I love JG, but his build in the current state of the NFL, I don't think can his build. I don't think will ever win MVP, unfortunately for the Lions. But I don't care about him winning MVP because I care about a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I both Miggy and Trout both had historic seasons both of those years. I just think the narrative Miggy's season contributed more to just the narrative of like the Tigers and just that season than say someone like Mike Trout, who I think you can make the strong argument was better. I think that's similar here, where yeah, Judge statistically has had the better season. I will concede that, but Cal Raleigh in terms of just the narrative of this season, I think has had a greater impact. But yeah, I will find out in November. We have a few months to go. Let us know in the comments who you got. Are you big dumper? Are you all rise? Honestly, like I don't think that there's a wrong answer here. That's why this is such a
No,
fun one to debate. Big respect for just what Cal and Aaron have done for the game and helping baseball to become back to relevancy, which is great for all of us. Speaking of relevancy for baseball, we are in the postseason. This is my favorite postseason of all the professional sports. MLB postseason. There is nothing like postseason baseball. Just the intensity, the series. I love it. Obviously, we already have 2 games down. We got 2 more yet to go. Eli, who are you looking at this postseason?
I mean obviously I'll have probably the most attention I'll have is to the Tigers, but a team I'm interested to see how they perform in kind of their first year. I don't want to say first year back in the spotlight, but the first where they've truly looked like they're kind of back in the form. The Red Sox to me are an interesting team in the sense of their young talent that we've been talking about for the past couple of years is finally starting to blossom. And arguably, I'd say the best trade in recent. Garrett Crochet was an out of the park trade for the Red Sox, which their pitching is still a bit of a concern. Aroldis Chapman is a revelation in terms of elite closing ability and regaining his form this year in his stretch of consecutive scoreless appearances. But the Red Sox are a really interesting team with Jaron Duran and Ceddanne Rafaela coming into form this year. 2 guys that had question marks of could they add on to their rookie seat. Well, Jaron Duran was his second year, but he played briefly the year before. But 2 guys who had really 1 year of success, could they build off of that? Especially Rafaela, who ended his year not great. And those 2 were both fantastic to add on with Bregman. Roman Anthony came on strong before his injury. So I think they're a really interesting team and against the Yankees team who, in my opinion, is a pretty vulnerable team because of their bullpen issues, especially in Yankee Stadium in the 3-game series. That's a really interesting series for me, especially one where the Red Sox dominated this year. I think the last time they played, they swept. I know the Red Sox won the season series, but I think that's the interesting team for me personally.
Yeah, kind of, and we already talked about them, but the Mariners, I mean, the bats they added at the trade deadline with Naylor and Eugenio Suarez. And just overall, their back end of their bullpen's fantastic. Their pitching, the lineup with Julio Rodriguez on top of obviously a big dumper and a Rosarina and the guys I just mentioned at the trade deadline. Not many holes on that roster. And, obviously Toronto is kind of in a similar respect, but no one's really talking about the Blue Jays just because you got the Red Sox Yankees series. But I mean, Toronto and Seattle could be a fantastic series if it comes down to that. And then you just have major firepower in the National League. Obviously, the Dodgers could still come back, but the Phillies roster is just fantastic as well. Obviously, adding Duran at the trade deadline kind of solidified the back end of their bullpen. And obviously with Schwarber and Turner and Harper and Castellanos and, the names go on and on. There's no holes in that lineup. So in the starting pitching is just fantastic for the Phillies. So I know the Brewers went on a major run there, but I could see them potentially going out early, and someone like the Phillies or an experienced team like the Dodgers comes out of there. But I mean, ultimately, I kind of like the Phillies and either Blue Jays or Mariners in the World Series.
Yeah, I kind of hate how the seeding is for like the National League, 'cause I really wish that the Dodgers wouldn't play like the Phillies. Say, assuming that the Dodgers beat Cincinnati, but that they wouldn't play Philly in the next round. I'd rather that be who goes to the World Series. Yeah, I like what you said, Steve, about Toronto being underrated and kind of not talked about. Toronto has the second best home record of all major league teams. They are second only to the Phillies. They had 54 wins at home, and as the number one seed, they will have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Um, so that's one for me where I don't know why we're not talking about them more. I think that they're a team that could be really sneaky. Maybe we see a rematch of the '93 World Series where it's Blue Jays Phillies. Um, Another team, yeah, the Brewers are an interesting team. Uh, the irony of them coming from the original Seattle Pilots organization and then moving to Milwaukee to become the Brewers is they remind me a lot of Seattle in the sense that they're a team that Seattle's kind of like a notch below where the Brewers just make the playoffs, but then they never really do anything in the playoffs. To me, they've never really been a threat, and maybe that's just growing up as an NL Central observer, as a Cardinals fan, and just those Prince Fielder days. They were a team that would make the playoffs, but then never do anything outside of that. And maybe this is their year to finally win something big. They have in my opinion, they have the best pitching in all of baseball. Like they are the best. They're third in hits allowed, runs allowed, second in ERA. They're fifth in home runs allowed and strikeouts. Like they are a very good overall like pitching unit. Will that be enough to catapult them? I could easily see them making the NLCS because honestly, like I don't think the Padres make it past the Cubs, but I don't think the Cubs are a threat to go on a run. I think you're looking at Philadelphia and the Dodgers there in the NL. But Toronto and Seattle are two teams that I could see hopefully going on a run. That'd be fun because they don't normally do that. Kind of hoping the Yankees don't go on a run, but could definitely see that as well.
Yeah, I do think that I don't think this will go anywhere, but I do find the Dodgers in a Red Series to be interesting only because of the fact that I do think the front end of the pitching for the Reds is sneaky good because they're going to roll out Hunter Green and Andrew Abbott 1-2 in those games 1 and 2. And I do know, I mean, the Dodgers don't have some of their big guys in the bullpen. They're missing Kirby Yates is still on the IL, as well as Michael Kopech. So they don't have those guys that they kind of relied on last year. So I mean, Hunter Green and Will Smith is also hurt. I mean, don't get me wrong. You're saying these guys, and they still have Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez. Like it's a long shot, but I'm kind of going to be watching that game tonight to see if Hunter Green and Andrew Abbott can kind of put the Reds on their back because the Reds aren't going to score many runs against Blake Snell and Yamamoto. Like that's not going to happen when Ellie De La Cruz is your best hitter, who, in my opinion, if you want a definition of streaky hitter, he's your definition of streaky hitter. But I'm going to be watching that game tonight. I maybe it's a long shot, but I think the Reds could make it interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that is kind of interesting. You got Terry Francona coming back. He's in the playoffs. So having a guy like that with just a lot of playoff experience with different teams in the clubhouse, I think they're just gonna, they're, there's nothing they can lose. Basically, they're coming into that, and obviously everybody's picking the Dodgers, but they can come in and easily take that. Just for all the reasons that you just said. You got Dodgers coming in. Maybe it's a little bit of arrogance, that sort of thing, and then you go and lose game one, and then all bets are off. It's kind of like this 3-game series. these teams come in on the road game one and they take it just like the Tigers did today. I could see the Reds doing the same thing tonight. Something happens early on in that game, and next thing you know, the Dodgers wonder what happened, and they're out on the golf course in Indian summer and end of September, start of October.
When the Diamondbacks just did it a couple of years ago too, if you can,
Yeah.
that's an easy reference too. They were the exact same scenario where they got in the last weekend and they made it to the World Series.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. I like the Dodgers, or not the Diamondbacks, Reds comparison there. The Dodgers, I do think they look the most vulnerable that they have in like almost a decade. So I will say that with this being Kershaw's last year, like, does that give them added fight? Or it's like you don't really want the Dodgers to have added fight, but they might. And Shohei being the go-to for Game 3, if it goes to Game 3, that might be hard on Cincinnati. But yeah, I think that could be. I think that series is going to go one of two ways, where it's either going to be the Dodgers just absolutely dominating, or the Reds actually make it a series and it goes down to the wire there. But that will be. I think that's probably going to be one of the more exciting division or wild card matchups between that and the Red Sox Yankees, just because it's Red Sox Yankees. Like, that's awesome that we get that playoff matchup. Padres and Cubs, that doesn't. I don't think that's going to be much of a challenge for the Cubs. The Padres have not been good away from Petco Park, so I don't really see them making this a series.
Yeah, crazy thing about Kershaw is he's not even on the playoff roster. So I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing there. But
yeah, pretty baffling choice. I mean, to be honest, the way he's been pitching, it was kind of like Kershaw and Verlander to end the year. Obviously, Verlander's not in the playoffs. Those two are kind of like revelations where they turn back the clock. I think Verlander will probably come back one more year from what it sounded like, but Kershaw, it's his last year, and they both were spinning 6-inning gems with their 90-mile-an-hour fastballs. I think Verlander's actually a little higher than that still, but I mean,
Verlander's still hitting like 96, 97.
Yeah, he wants. Isn't he? How far away is he from 300? That's probably what he's going after, right?
He's like just over 30. Like few
shoot, never mind, not even close. Okay.
No, I think he's going to be the guy where he's like a Jamie Moyer, where he pitches into his late 40s. I truly actually believe he's like a Bartolo clone. Like, he does not want to give this up. He does want to be that last guy to reach 300, because I'm pretty sure we will not see that again in our lifetime.
No, he'll definitely be crafting that beer belly if he's going into his mid 40s. That's for sure.
Come back to the Tigers.
Yeah. Come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's, a lot of people thought he was washed. He is not washed. He was really good down the stretch. He's still a valuable pitcher in this league. But yeah, those are our takes. Let us know who you like in the playoffs. Maybe next week we do the look at the bracket and we pick winners and we see who we got going to the World Series and winning it. But yeah, until then, let us know who you got. We're just going to sit back and enjoy. We got to take a break, but we'll be right back. All right, we're back with our picks. This was a much better week last week was a much better week for Steve and I. So that's nice. So let's keep that momentum going here this week, Steve. Eli, let's hope for a rebound. We got to take down Hayden, guys. There's no reason he should be as far ahead as he is. And he didn't make a pick earlier this year. That's so annoying.
Lucky guy.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yep, we're just going to have a constant rise. That's what we're going to do. So it started last week.
Yeah.
Speak for yourself.
I am.
I'm not going to lie, the Dallas one felt good. Seeing everyone pick the Eagles. Or not the Eagles, the Packers. And to pick Dallas, that was nice.
I won't complain about that one, though.
Yeah, I think I had the Jacksonville one, the Giants one. There's a few that were really nice. I do another pool, and it's like, there's like, I was one of the few to pick a couple of those, so it was definitely a good result.
Yeah, you and I were all on the Giants last week, Steve. And
yeah, even called. I didn't even care about the spread. We called the win.
Yeah,
because Joel got hurt.
Jackson Dart season.
It's because
But
Justin Herbert underperformed, just like we had talked about.
mhm. All right. I'm not gonna lie, this I might change a lot of these because I don't know how I feel about these picks this week because I feel like there's some higher like spreads that maybe there should be, but we'll see where everyone lands. We'll start as always with Thursday night. We have the Rams hosting San Francisco. It is -5.5 for the Rams, +5.5 for San Francisco. Eli, who you like there?
I mean, I'm going to go with the team that kind of shocked me last week and how efficient they look on offense. I'm leaning towards the Rams on this one. I have the Rams picked. I think the 49ers are a little too mistake prone right now. Brock Purdy looked a little off his first game. He's forced a couple throws. Jacksonville also just appears to be a turnover forcing team this year. I think it was like 14 that they forced now. But I lean towards the Rams simply because I don't think the Niners have that shutdown corner that they generally do that can shut down Puka Nacua, who might be taking the crown as the best wide receiver in the NFL, at least for the time being. He's unbelievable. And Matty Stafford looks fantastic. So I'm leaning towards the Rams.
What was the spread in this game again, Jonathan?
-5.5 for the Rams, +5.5 for San Francisco.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I do think the Niners will bounce back a little bit, but their injury report is just everybody's questionable. Nobody's practicing. Something's a little off. Obviously, their roster is a little bit older. The Rams do have the tendency to play close games no matter what. They kick a few too many field goals at times. Obviously, we know, like Eli talked about with Stafford, I mean, he's just, obviously Calvin Johnson was a, lifetime talent receiver. He put up historic numbers. Cooper Kupp put up historic numbers. Now you got Puka Nacua on pace for like 2,200 yards, 170 catches, just a insane, for fantasy wise, bar none. Obviously, I think number one score out of even quarterbacks. So I think saying all that, I do think the Rams will cover, but it's gonna be kind of a last minute cover, kind of like that, long throw to Tutu Atwell to cover that against the Colts. The Rams just have a tendency to do that, kind of like they let the Eagles back in the game. For some reason, they're take their foot off the gas and that sort of thing in those games, and weird things just happen in the NFL when you take your foot off the gas.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick the Rams here. I don't feel great about it just because of the spread. I think that the Rams will win this game, and I'm struggling to believe that San Francisco, despite being 3-1, is actually going to be a really competitive team. I just don't know. I mean, they just need to get healthy is one of the biggest things. They need to get more consistent, but we shall see. But for right now, I'm picking the Rams. I don't have obviously much time to change that. But yeah, what you were talking about, Steve, with Puka on historic pace. Stafford was on the Pat McAfee show earlier today, and they were talking about how he has Calvin Johnson and Cooper Kupp, who have the number one and number two receiving seasons, and Puka's right on pace to be in the top three. So we'll see if that holds. For myself to have them in fantasy, I hope that does. That'd be fairly nice. But yeah, we shall see. Then, okay, we got another international game. We got Minnesota. They are in their second week being overseas. They stayed overseas. They're in London against the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are technically the home team here. It is +3.5 for the Cleveland Browns, -3.5 for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I think this line's a little insulting to the Vikings. I didn't think they played horrible in their first international game. It was mostly just Carson Wentz needed to clean it up after his first half, turnover wise. But the Steelers are prone to force a couple turnovers. The Browns are another good defense, but the Vikings are kind of finding their niche offense right now. I think Carson Wentz really started to find his stride at the end of that game when the Steelers kind of already put it close to out of reach. They need to get their run game going with Jordan Mason more against the Browns, which can be tough, especially against that Browns front. But I'm leaning towards the Vikings. I don't love the 3.5. I wish it was something like 2.5. But I'm still leaning towards the Vikings.
I'm going to go with what I went with last week with Jackson Dart. This is Dylan Gabriel's first game. He was announced as a starter this week. So I I believe he's going to unlock Quinshawn Judkins even more because he's had two very good games last 2 weeks. He's a little more mobile than obviously Joe Flacco. Obviously, Cedric Tillman's out, but you have a lot of speed in Isaiah Bond as another receiver. And I think Harold Fannin will get unlocked a little bit more with Dylan Gabriel, running the offense. And that front for the Browns is no joke. And with all the injuries on the Vikings offensive line, they're going to do the same thing that the Steelers did to Carson Wentz. That the Steelers probably should have won that game by 2 touchdowns, but kind of let him back in the fourth quarter there. So I think the Browns are going to shock the world, literally overseas, and I think they're going to win that game.
I would have been. I did not see that he was starting.
Yeah, Steve, breaking news here on Speak Now.
I looked. It was 3 hours ago, so that's on me. I'm keeping it though.
I did not know that Dylan Gabriel was starting. I picked the Vikings. But now I'm thinking about changing it. Like maybe they just only target Harold Fannin, only Fannin, But
oh boy.
I'm going to stick with my pick for the Vikings for now. I might change that as the weekend goes on. I think about that more. I think there's a huge advantage that the Vikings have been overseas now since last week. I think that's a pretty big advantage for them. And I think another week back with Jordan Addison in the lineup and practicing and being a part of that game plan, I think can open things up for Minnesota. If this was Joe Flacco, no doubt Minnesota, but we don't know what Dylan Gabriel is going to look like. And who knows, maybe he gets benched partway through, like after the first half because he sucks so bad and Shadur comes and leads them to a victory. And it's the Shadur area. But I will keep the Vikings there. Basically, I like the overseas advantage there. Then we get another game that I found a little tricky. Raiders at Indianapolis. Indianapolis has been really good at home, so maybe I'm thinking this is harder than it is. But it is -6.5 for the Colts, +6.5 for the Raiders. Raiders looking a lot better last week against the Bears. Ashton Jeanty breaking out. Does that factor into this game at all, Eli?
No, because honestly, I think it was more so the Bears trying to hand them that game for a long time. I think if the Raiders, realistically, they should have had that game by the balls and they dropped it. And they still had a chance to win it at the end, even though they had 3 turnovers from Geno. And they had their field goal blocked, which is just common this year. Once again, actually lost me the spread, so that happened again. I'm leaning towards the Colts just because the Raiders' weakness is their passing offense, which matches with the Colts right now, not having Kenny Moore and relying on Mike Hilton, which isn't the best for them. And, they have Charvarius Ward as well. But I think the Colts' front is generally going to be a concern. And I think DeForest Buckner should command that middle. I think Jeanty will still have another good game. I just think Geno's fallen off a cliff these past couple of weeks. So I'm leaning towards the Colts. I think that even last week, I think it was kind of flukish that they lost. I think they deserved to even win against the Rams last week. So I'll take the Colts.
Yeah, I'll take the Colts as well. I don't think this game's going to be particularly close. They just have too much firepower with Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Warren, Michael Pittman, the way Daniel Jones is running that squad. And I do think they're going to force, as Eli alluded to, probably 3 to 4 turnovers for Geno. It's kind of been that's kind of what's happened every week. So I definitely see the Colts running away with this one.
Yeah, maybe I'm reading too much into Jeanty's last game. I feel like that will make this a little bit closer. Maybe he's finally unlocked. I think the Colts win, but I do take Vegas to cover the spread here. Again, it might change that. To your point, Geno has not looked good at all, and bad quarterback play should be a huge factor in picking these games. And then we got another intriguing matchup of 2 teams that have had poor starts to the season. We got the Giants in New Orleans against the Saints. It's +1.5 for the Giants, -1.5 for the Saints. Jackson Dart back at it, hopefully. And then obviously they're without Neighbors, but Cam Scadaboo is an absolute dog. Do the Giants win here, Eli?
Yeah, I think they do. I think the fact that it's the pick 'em makes it relatively easy for me. It's not, it's just the Saints have, for the most part, been competitive, but they haven't shown the desire to really win a game. They've just really kept it close for all but the Seattle game. And I just think the Giants' defensive front, they showed their prowess against Herbert last week. They only got 2 or 3 sacks, but they consistently pressured him. And I think the Giants' O line with Andrew Thomas is starting to finally get healthy. That should protect Dart. Dart has to protect himself because he took himself out of a couple plays in that game last week. But I like the Giants still. I think they need a pass catcher to step up, which was kind of the case before they got Neighbors before, and no one ever did. But I like the Giants.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Dart came into a difficult situation last week. I think they had a pretty vanilla game plan, a lot of design runs for Dart to get him outside the pocket and kind of one read throws, that kind of thing. I think they're going to let him maybe go to that second read or make some more plays, without Neighbors. But you have dump offs to Scatabo. Theo Johnson's going to have to step up at tight end. And you'll have guys like Darius Slayton that'll get more into play. I think with maybe Wandale Robinson playing more outside instead of only in the slot. So I could see that happening. And I think that front seven of the Giants is just going to give Kellen Moore and Spencer Rattler problems for the Saints. They don't really have an identity, to Eli's point, and it doesn't seem like they have a huge desire to win games. I completely agree with that, and I like the Giants as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Giants here. The one thing I will say that makes me think about this possibility for the Saints is the Giants, I believe, are averaging like 6 yards run against or something like that. Like their run defense hasn't been particularly great, and New Orleans has been able to somewhat run the ball. They ran it a lot better last week with Kendre Miller and Alvin Kamara. So if that continues, maybe they make this game competitive. But I do think that the Giants ultimately win this. I see the Giants as a team that can be a 7-9 win team this year, just with that defense alone. And now that Jackson Dart is starting for the foreseeable future, even without Neighbors, I just think that they're a team that will get progressively more competitive as the season goes on. I really like their defense a lot. I don't think it matters that New Orleans is at home. At this point they just need to go to. I don't know. We need Tyler Shough, man. They need to see what they have in him. But I don't think it makes much of a difference. They're taking a quarterback next year anyway. So, yeah, give me the Giants. Then we got the Cowboys, after a thrilling overtime tie, now traveling to MetLife Stadium to take on the Jets. It's -2.5 for the Cowboys, +2.5 for the Jets. Does Aaron Glenn finally get his first win as a head coach, Eli?
No. Until they can show me that they're able to play a clean game, I have no desire to pick them. They're just a sloppy team altogether. And they'll put a good drive at the end of the game just to make the stats look better. But it'll always be out of reach. I just don't think their defense is good enough to stop a surprisingly good Cowboys offense. And the Cowboys defense is an issue, but it's only 2.5. So I'm just going to go with the team who I think is going to win in the Cowboys.
I do think the Jets are, I'm sure Fields is going to get a lot of discussions with the offensive staff on pushing that ball down the field. I think Tanner Engstrand's going to really emphasize that, especially against the Cowboys this week. Mason Taylor showed up pretty good last week. And there's no reason that Garrett Wilson's not targeted 12 to 14 times by Justin Fields. They really have no one else at receiver. And that should be a really good weapon for the Jets. Saying all that, I really like what Dak Prescott's doing for the Cowboys, and Javonte Williams has been a revelation, kind of bringing back to his kind of good seasons with the Broncos. He's been great for that rushing attack, and George Pickens had a great game last week to kind of keep them competitive and ultimately get that tie. So saying all that, I do think the Cowboys are going to take it. Aaron Glenn he seems to be losing the guys a little bit based on some sideline interactions and things like that. and that could snowball really quickly into loss after loss. So I do like the Cowboys.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't see the Aaron Glenn era in New York going well. To your point, Steve, yeah, if they keep losing like this is going to snowball and snowball. I just like the way that the Cowboys are playing. I don't think that they're going to be an uberly competitive team, but they're going to be keeping their offense is just going to keep them in a lot of games that maybe they shouldn't be because of their defense. Pickens finally emerging as the star that all of us Steelers fans knew he could be is awesome to see for him. Sucks that we don't get to see that with our team, but honestly, that just wasn't a good fit. He's a great fit in Dallas. I like the Cowboys here. Then we got I think this will be a really good game. We got the Broncos taking on the Eagles. Broncos probably should have had even more points against the Bengals, should have even more commanding victory, but they are progressing in the right direction. Meanwhile, Philadelphia looks like either the best or second best team in the NFL right now. The spread is -4.5 for the Eagles, +4.5 for the Broncos. Who are you guys taking in this game?
Yeah, I like what the Broncos did in offense. I mean, Bo Nix had 324 yards, or it was over 300 yards, and the rushing attack looked the best that it had. Getting both Harvey and Dobbins integrated. It was kind of like that Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara at the end of Sean Payton in New Orleans. Kind of gave me that feel. And honestly, I think the fact that it's 4.5, we're getting the ability to lose by a field goal. I think this will be a really close game where I'm going to lead towards the Broncos. I do think that I could see the Eagles squeaking out a win, but I think 4.5 is a bit too much for me to pick the Eagles.
Yeah, this is one of those games I'm going to go back and forth with for all the reasons that Eli mentioned. I think the Broncos had really too easy of a game this past week, and that could get them to get off to a slow start against the Eagles. You're not going to have J.K. Dobbins or Harvey, run 10 yards before they're touched or that sort of thing playing against the Eagles. They just have too much talent on their side of the ball. The middle is going to be clogged up with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and those types of things. I do like what I saw out of the Broncos defense, albeit against the Bengals. You had Nick Benito, you had some of the other guys on their defense. Patrick Surtain had a great game in coverage against Jamar Chase. Completely frustrated him for the most part. So I do like that going up against the Eagles wide receivers. And, Barkley hasn't had a great start. I think their offensive line has been just a slight notch below what it has been in the past with some injuries and also, not having Mekhi Becton from last year. So I agree with Eli. I do think the Broncos are going to cover, but I also think the Eagles will win this game.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think Broncos cover, but I think the Eagles win. I think the Broncos are starting to come into their own as a team and starting to really come along nicely. And they again should be competitive in their division. But Eagles are just playing really good football here, even without it being perfect. Like they're playing pretty good football for the first month of the season. Then we got the Dolphins going to Carolina. Take on the Panthers. It's +1.5 for the Dolphins, -1.5 for the Panthers. Dolphins lose Tyreek Hill to a season-ending injury. Does that factor into your pick for this game, Eli?
No, honestly, I just think that the Panthers are just a disgusting organization who can't seem to build a team. Their O-line stinks. Their quarterback is 5 foot pretty much. I'm going to go with the Dolphins. I just think their offense is starting to come into their own. I just don't think either defense is warranting enough for me to really dive into say one has the advantage over the other. So I'm going to take the Dolphins. I think Achane, and I think we could see Jalen Waddle's first a step in the right direction in his season. So I'm picking the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think what we saw out of the Dolphins is kind of what we've been accustomed to as far as some creativity, short yardage plays, misdirections, things like that. Just a great talent like Achane. I don't really honestly, they'll of course miss Tyreek Hill, but where did Darren Waller come from all of a sudden? I mean, 2 touchdowns, 33 years old. He hasn't been in the league in like 2 years or or whatever, playing about 29% of the snaps, I believe. So that was kind of crazy. I do think you're going to see a little bit more of Ollie Gordon in this game, and I think they'll kind of impose their will on the Panthers. One guy to look for on the Panthers, if they bring him back, is Jalen Coker. I could see him helping that offense. They just, like Eli said, they don't really have an identity, and they don't know, as far as what to do with the backfield, and their defense has been kind of up and down. So I like the Dolphins as well in that game.
Yeah, one guy I'm watching here in this game is going to be Malik Washington for the Dolphins. He is kind of like the next guy up with Tyreek going down, and he's got a few catches every game, but he's also been involved in the run game too. Got a few rushes, so he's a guy that I think his usage is just going to go up. He's someone that's pretty good in space, pretty good at being elusive. So he's someone that, from a fantasy aspect and just for the Dolphins team, I like there. Yeah, I see them winning this game. I have them to cover too. Then we have Houston going to Baltimore, a matchup of surprising 1-3 teams. The spread is +1.5 for the Texans, plus 3.5 for the Texans, minus 3.5 for the Ravens. Eli, do the Ravens get back on track here at home?
I'm going to go with no, only because I'm assuming the fact that Lamar doesn't play right now based off what I've read. If he does play, I do think I'd change it to the Ravens. But right now, I mean, Madubuike is done for the year. I think the Ravens defense in general is just limping. Humphrey and Nate Wiggins both left that Chiefs game as well. I think the Texans offense, I mean, it's nice to go against a team like the Titans to kind of get a revamp on the offense. And I just think the Texans defense is kind of saving them in terms of not looking like a fool. So I'm going to go with the Texans. I think they'll win outright regardless. I like the Texans. I think their offense and Woody Marks continues to kind of resurge.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Another guy that's out for the multi-week absence is Roquan Smith. So that's another injury for the Ravens. So I think that's, they've obviously had, you give up 4 touchdowns, Patrick Mahomes, you get obliterated, by the Lions and Bills offenses. Even the Browns put up some yardage in that game. So, I kind of like what the Texans did with Woody Marks last week. They also are using Christian Kirk. And there's another veteran they have playing at wide receiver. Can't think of his name, but they're kind of having those rookies play a little bit less and getting some experience on the perimeter of their offense. And I like less usage of Nick Chubb and, kind of giving some options to that offense more than Nico Collins. So I also like the Texans in this game. And they have, if they're going against Cooper Rush, that front seven and that secondary for the Texans is fantastic with Derek Stingley.
Yeah, I think this game would be a challenge for Baltimore, even with Lamar playing. Just with that front seven for Houston, and we're starting to enter into Woody Marks' season. Baltimore's defense has not looked good. Now they're without Madubuike, without Roquan Smith. I like the Texans here to win and obviously cover. Then we got a pretty big spread here. Is it bigger than it should be? We got Titans, Cardinals. It is +7.5 for Tennessee, -7.5 for Arizona at home for the Cardinals. Trey Benson's season, he should get more work against a Titans D that has struggled against the run. Do the Cardinals cover and win here, Eli, or are Tennessee going to actually pull something out here?
I'm not wasting my time covering the Titans. I think the Cardinals will cover -7.5. They look good in the second half against a good Seahawks defense. Marvin Harrison will probably have another step forward, and Trey Benson as well. And the Cardinals defense is actually sneaky good so far this year as well. So Cardinals are going to cover.
There is some concern about Trey Benson not being available for this game. I see his status is in question. I see that Michael Carter was signed to the active roster, so that could be a little bit of a concern for the Cardinals. But the offense with Brian Callahan handing over the play calling duties to, I believe, the wide receiver coach. Obviously, that was a complete flop last week. Calvin Ridley had less playing time for undisclosed reasons. I think we can kind of, connect the dots there. There's no accuracy in the passing game. They will be helped out. I believe Ty J. Spears will be activated for this game, so that should give Pollard a little bit of a breather. So I do think this game will be competitive, and I think the Titans can actually cover this spread, but I do believe they will not win this game.
Uh, I see. I had Tennessee to cover until thinking about just more about how impressive Arizona was against the Seahawks in the last game. It really feels like they're starting to come together. And yeah, I haven't seen enough from Tennessee yet. I could see them losing this game in double digit fashion and then Callahan getting fired after this game, but we'll see how much longer his leash is. Cam Ward seems pretty frustrated with how everything's going there, and he's their franchise guy. Yeah, I don't see Callahan making it out of this season. I like Arizona at home to win and cover, but that's one where I might change. That's a pretty big spread. Um, so then we got the Buccaneers going to Seattle to take on a good Seattle defense. It's plus 3.5 for the Bucks, minus 3.5 for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks, they got to win, but I think their second half, they kind of had some poor playing habits that I think may dribble into this Buccaneers game. The Buccaneers, I think Godwin will start to get it going. He got targeted 10 times last game. I think that's bound to improve. He only had 2 catches. So I think the Buccaneers, I think, will prevail against the Seahawks. I do think they'll just win. I just think the Seahawks offense is just a little too streaky to go against a really steady Buccaneers offense.
Yeah, one major concern is Bucky Irving getting the MRI, so I'm not sure what that's going to do to them. I don't like how they use Chris Godwin in the first game back. He's was split out wide instead of in the slot, I believe, like 70% of the snaps. I'm not sure why you put Sterling Shepard in the slot versus Chris Godwin in the first game back. That seems really like a tactical error. A tactical error in my mind. But saying all that, I do like Baker Mayfield over Sam Darnold. It's kind of a simplified way of looking at this game, so I like the Bucks.
Yeah, I like the Bucks to win, but I think Seattle will cover here with them being at home. So I'm taking Seattle to cover, Bucks to win. Next up, we get a nice matchup here. We got the Lions traveling to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals, a game that Steve and I will be at. It is minus 10.5 for the Lions, plus 10.5 for the Bengals.
I'm not wasting my time on the Bengals. It's the Lions minus 10.5. We can just move on. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, it's kind of like last week with the Browns. I mean, you had a big spread, and just when a team's I guess below average to be nice at this point. Just special teams and making plays on defense and those types of things, even if they put up a fight, I think just make the difference in these games. And, Khalif Raymond kind of proved that last week. Lions, I believe, are second in the league in sacks. We saw the Bengals offensive line basically be a turnstile to the Broncos. I think you're going to see the same thing against the Lions. Aiden Hutchinson is going to absolutely feast. It could be kind of a signature game for him. I don't think they're going to be ready for that. I do think initially, first quarter, some scripted plays. I think the Bengals will put up a fight, but I think the Lions win by at least 3 touchdowns.
I 100% agree. This is going to be like a 20-point difference by the end of the game. Yeah, I like the Lions. The reason why I picked the Browns last week is because their front seven I thought could give Detroit some problems. That was not a non-issue for the most part. Cincinnati's definitely not giving Detroit any issues. At least like Cincinnati's defense won't. Yeah, I like the Lions here. The Bengals are. This is unfortunately going to be a lost season for them, and I could see Zach Taylor getting fired either partway through the season or at the end of the season. Then we got Commanders traveling to the Los Angeles, take on the Chargers. Last I knew, Jaden Daniels was still questionable for this game, but we got the Commanders plus 2.5, Chargers minus 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, even if he plays, I just think the issue of the Commanders is, I mean, they've had injuries on their offense, but I think their biggest issue is I think their defense just kind of sucks. They're a really old team. And I'm just not really convinced about like they're relying on Von Miller a lot, and their secondary is just kind of questionable. Mikey Sanders still gave up a couple big plays to Drake London. So I'm not really sold on the Commanders' defense, and until that, I think the Chargers will rebound. Um, I think Justin Herbert will rebound, and Amari Hampton's coming into his own. So I'm leaning towards the Chargers in this one.
Yeah, I would tend to completely agree with that. I think Justin Herbert's going to have a bounce back game this week. I do think they need to incorporate Lad McConkey into their offense a little bit more, maybe use the tight end there as well. I think Keenan Allen will have kind of a little bit more of a bounce back game because I think Quentin Johnston will get a little bit more attention based on just he's at a top 5 fantasy start, right, for the Chargers, which is kind of wild. And Hampton, as Eli alluded to, definitely, obviously with the Harris injury, unquestioned, doesn't have to look behind his back, has taken over that backfield and has kind of gotten through that first rookie wall in the first few weeks, obviously along with the Genti that we talked about earlier with the Raiders. So agree with everything Eli said about the Commanders and what they've shown so far. So I like the Chargers as well.
Yeah, this might be a hot take, and I'm sure this will change if slash when Jaden Daniels gets healthy. But I don't see the Commanders as being a particularly good team. I could honestly see them as finishing fourth in that division because I think the Giants are just getting better, and I think the Cowboys just offensively will be better. We need to see Jaden Daniels get healthy and just have a little bit more to work with. We haven't seen that yet. But until that happens, I'm picking the Chargers here. I really like where Marion Hampton is heading in his trajectory. Then we got Sunday Night Football. We got the Patriots traveling to Buffalo to take on the undefeated Bills. Bills have yet to score under 30 points in a game this season. The spread is -7.5 for the Bills, +7.5 for the Patriots.
Yeah, I think the spread's a little too disrespectful to Patriots. I think the Patriots are a sneaky team in the sense of I think they'll only continue to improve. I think Drake May is arguably the best quarterback in that class. He's getting to the point where you can start to discuss that. Not quite above Jaden Daniels because Jaden Daniels has a whole year of tenure and playoff wins to his name. But Drake May is been really impressive, and the Bills have had a couple, like their second and third quarter, they average 5 points a quarter compared to the first and fourth, they average 10. So they have those mental lapses in the middle of the game. Which is why I lean towards the Patriots, regardless if they win or lose. I just think they'll be able to keep it close enough for them to cover. And I think they're a sneaky team to fill into that 7 slot, kind of like how the Broncos did last year in the playoffs.
Where's this game being played at, Jonathan? Sorry.
Buffalo.
The Bills.
Okay, yeah. So, the Bills were a little bit sloppy last week and let Miami cover that spread. And I think the Patriots are a lot better team than the Dolphins, regardless of the improvement that was shown. I think Mike Vrabel's kind of coming into his own with the coaching. You got Christian Gonzalez back. Drake May just keeps getting better every week, and I think they're finding a little bit more identity in their running and passing game, as well as their defense. They put together just a complete performance last week against the Panthers. So I actually like the Patriots to shock the Bills and win that game.
Nice. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I do think the Patriots are sneaky good, especially with Stephon Diggs now, like really becoming accustomed to that offense. I think Drake May is a franchise quarterback for them. I do have Buffalo winning this game, but I do think the Patriots definitely cover it. I think this could be like a 31-24, 31-27 game, and the Patriots cover. But yeah, I think the Patriots definitely have their guy. Then we got our Monday night football game. We got the Chiefs traveling to Duval to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars, -3.5 for the Chiefs, +3.5 for the Jaguars. The Chiefs look like they might be back now that they got Xavier Worthy healthy.
Yeah, I just think the Ravens just kind of suck right now, to be completely honest. I think the Jags, Liam Cohen is my favorite hire of this entire coaching cycle. I really like him. He's cringy, which is just like how Dan Campbell was at his start. So it it warned me that people were making fun of him. I'm like, nah, man. If you're making fun of that coach, he's probably a good one. I just really like how they're moving. Trevor Lawrence has been spreading the ball out. He hasn't played particularly well, but he's played mistake free enough, and that defense forces enough mistakes where it can kind of just cancel out if Lawrence messes up in that running game. Shocker, Liam Cohen is a good running game. It's worked out really well. ETN's coming into his own, and they have Tutton who throw him in for 10 snaps a game, and he might leash off a 40-yard play if you need him to. He has that game-breaking speed. So I'm going for the Jags, and I think the fact that they're home helps me too. If it was at Arrowhead, I would probably lean towards the Chiefs, but I think the Jags at home, they're a surprising team this year, so I'm going with the Jags.
Yeah, this is a really tough one. I could definitely see that happening. It is big having Xavier Worthy back for the Chiefs. I do agree with Eli. I like the number of weapons that Liam Cohen's using in that offense. It's kind of back to what he was doing with the Bucks, right? So just very deceptive. Keeping guys fresh, taking guys in and out of the game. You have 3-4 guys at wide receiver. You've got tight end. You got 2 or 3 running backs that you're using. So it's really set up just like the Bucks offense. Obviously, I wouldn't put Lawrence quite with Mayfield, but obviously he was a number 1 pick and can hold his own as well. But ultimately, I think Spagnuolo is going to put a lot of pressure on Lawrence, and there will be some mistakes made. And I think Mahomes will make just enough plays. And I think the Xavier Worthy and Tyquan Thornton, and they're going to make some plays down the field. And I think the Chiefs will cover that spread.
Yeah, I'm back on the Jaguars after last week. I know I had been on them and then off them, now back on them. But I am picking the Chiefs because honestly, what one aspect that we're not talking about here is Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has been playing really well this season. Yeah, he's been super fantasy relevant for like the first time in years. Honestly, guys, could be a dark horse MVP candidate. We've been talking about Josh Allen repeating, other guys, but it's like Patrick Mahomes is like actually playing really good football here early in the season, and using his legs a lot more. So I like just how he's playing. Obviously, he's getting his weapons back. So I feel like they're only going to get better. I do think the Chiefs are back, and I do think that they win this one and cover the spread. So I am picking the Chiefs. But yeah, those are our picks. Let us know in the comments what you guys got. Do you guys have any final comments before we sign off here?
We're done the field.
Absolutely, we're gonna take over Paycor Stadium on Sunday. Even if Burrow was there, we would have been doing the same thing. So that's just going to happen on Sunday.
Yeah, this is gonna be a good weekend for Detroit sports. We are so back. So thank you guys for another episode. We will be back next week. Probably try to do Wednesday because I know Steve and I getting back a little bit later, and then I fly back out here on Tuesday. So I don't know if Wednesday works for you guys, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, until then, speak now or forever hold your peace. Peace.
Peace.